Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Colin'S Corner, episode number 22. At this point, it's been a great 20 plus episodes. Last episode, I introduced a guest to the corner. That was great. That was interesting. And now I get to touch on some other stuff. Go back to our regular type stuff. But please do let me know if you want to continue seeing short little guest things on here. Aside from the podcast, let me know what other stuff you want to do. I'm going to do some vlogs. I'm going to do some other stuff. That'll all be Colin's Corner, but I won't always be in the corner. So please do let me know. I appreciate the feedback. Let's get into it here. There's been some before we get into it, please subscribe. Do that stuff, like the video. A lot of you are not subscribed, so please do subscribe. All right. Now let's get into it. Why do we need God? All right. And I'm going to try and take this from perspective, not with my own sort of belief of in Christ, in Jesus. Just when I say the word God, understand I use the word God loosely in whatever your definition of God is, whatever your definition of a higher power, of some sort of floating thing in the sky, whatever you want to call it, all right? Whatever that is to you, okay? So when I use the word God, I don't use it in the way of, the Christian God or, the Jewish God or Muslim or Hindu or Buddhist or, any other religion. I use it loosely as God as a general term, okay? So anyways, why do we need God? Why do we need a higher power? Why do we need why do we need a creator, an intelligent being that oversees everything? Why do we need that? Okay. When I look at that, when I try and answer that question, I look at the way that the world is now, the way the world's been going, all the events happening, all the things happening, everything that we go through every day, the things that I go through in my everyday life, my experiences, the experiences that I've heard from other people, from people I know, from people that I don't know, from, things I've listened to, podcasts I've listened to, from books I read. I take all this information that I know, all this information in, and I come to one conclusion, and the conclusion is that we need help. All of us, every single person on this earth needs help. We're all looking for something. We all need some sort of guidance. And it's one thing to look for that guidance and we do this in multiple ways. Constructively, we say, I can handle it on my own. I'm smart. I've got this. I can handle it on my own. And that can manifest itself in many different ways. It can manifest itself in doing negative things and self-medicating and saying, I have the answers, and power just flickered, in doing something that's not good for you. A lot of people, drugs or alcohol or stuff like that. People tend to self-medicate and think they have the answers and think that they'll be okay. People try to replace things with God, with a higher power, right? Another way is, well, let me ask my fellow human buddy over here who has the same amount of human capacity that I do, right? Okay, well, my dad or my brother or my best friend or whoever, let me ask them for advice, my therapist, whoever it is. They have the same amount of human capacity that me and you have, no matter how close we are to them, no matter how much the human knowledge we think they know or have accumulated. They are not God. They're not a God. They're not a creator of the universe, right? They don't have that same. What God has isn't even knowledge. It's just who He is. It's just His nature, who He is. We don't have that in us. I'm not God. I don't know those things. My best friend, my therapist, my teacher, my brother, my whoever it is, they don't know those things, right? They are not God. So we tend to do all these things. We tend to look for answers in all these other places. And you might notice this in your own life. When you look for answers in the wrong places, it ends up leading you down the wrong path. Now, it might seem like it's the right answer. right? It might say, oh, well, my dad has my best interest in mind. My friend has my best interest in mind. My therapist has my best interest in mind. Whoever it is, that person has your best interest in mind, right? So why is it that even though they have your best interest in mind, they're doing everything they can to give you the right answer, that when you take their advice or you take your own advice, it still ends up going sideways. It still ends up going wrong. It's because we can't see the picture the way God sees the picture. God painted the picture, right? The way that we currently live, the world that we're living in, God has painted that picture. He created it. He knows every single little intricacy of it. He knows how everything is going to interact with it one another. He knows that stuff. We don't know that stuff. We have some sort of outside weird perspective where we don't know the little things that God has created to help us through the things that we're going through. So we look for answers in the wrong places. That's one reason. We look for answers in things that we think and as humans know to be fact or to be true, but there are intricacies that only God can explain to us, that even when someone has our absolute best interest in mind, no strings attached, they don't know those things, right? They don't understand the things that God understands, that He knows, right? And again, reminder, I'm using God as a loose term, as a higher power or a creator or an intelligent being or whatever you believe that to be. All right. The other thing that we do is we think, okay, well, I've attained a certain level of success. I don't need God anymore, right? Because I've done everything I can and I'm in a great position now and I don't need God because we think we're somehow better than that. We think we're somehow better than whoever created us or whatever all knowing power or being is there. We think we know more, which is so naive and so ignorant. It's so, to think that way is just, it makes no sense. To think that, well, I'm successful, I don't need these things. Well, how? How could you not need God? How could you? That's like saying my mother. I don't need my mother and father. They have nothing to offer me. I have all the answers. That's what teenagers do, They resent their parents because they think they've learned everything. And not every teenager does that, but that's a common quality in a lot of teenagers is I know more than my parents. And you don't, because oftentimes later in life, you'll come back and you'll say, "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I don't know everything. I disrespected you because I told you I knew everything and I ignored you and I said rude things to you because in my right mind, somehow I thought that I knew more than you and I didn't." Right? We do that all the time. Every one of us has done that at some point in our young lives, and sometimes we even still do it now, right? As adults. And I'm 20 years old, so if you're watching this and you're like 40, maybe a little weird for you to hear me talking like this, but perspective. Everyone gains their own perspective in their own ways at whatever age they gain it at. So take that as you will. We tend to think that we don't need God, right? The other thing that we do is we put other things before God, right? When clearly God is the most important thing. That's clear and obvious to anybody. But we put money before God. We put material things before God. We put our phones before God. We put our likes and comments and all this other stuff that I tell you to do at the beginning and end of the video. We put that stuff before God. We put numbers before God. I have this many things and he has that many things and she has this number of that or whatever. And we put all this stuff before God. We put our car before God. Oh, I love this and I love that. And we say we love all these material things. When we try and self-medicate, when we use drugs, pleasure can be a form of disrespecting God, a form of not even just disrespect, just a form of disregard. If saying God has given me this body, why am I not taking care of it? So we put these things before God, and that's how the world ends up the way it does, because we lose our sense of, hey, we need God, we need guidance. When we think we have all the answers, that's how we end up doing all these things. That's how we end up in these wars. That's how we end up putting politicians in office and letting things get so corrupt to the point where everything is a lie. That's how we get to the point where we're in Hollywood and there's no sense of God anymore. Everything is, you know, Christianity is demonized, and we get to the point where we have the Olympics and they're just persecuting Jesus clearly. They're mocking the Last Supper. They're having everyone dress up in drag and do all these things, and there's no problem with that. But when you do it in a way and you're mocking the Last Supper, and you're just putting all these things that are just clearly go against, you know, the the Christian faith, you know, God made us the way that he made us for a reason, right? Not to go and chop our genitals off. Get mad at me if you want to in the comments. That is how God made us in any religion. So don't try and tell me all this stuff about it's accepted another. No, in no religion does it encourage people that if you feel the need, you should go chop your genitals off. And it nowhere ever for any reason does it say that. Please feel free to discuss this with me. I'm confident in what I know and understand. We follow our own what we think is to be true. We follow our own beliefs, our own instincts, and that's not right ever for any reason. We might do things that are right, but we don't have all the right answers. We don't do the right things all the time, right? So why do we need God? We need God because he created us. We need God like a a newborn needs its mother, because he gives us everything that we need to succeed more. He blesses us with all these amazing things. But we fall apart from God because we take these things that he's given us and we use them, for negative things. We take these natural these plants and all this stuff, and we take the poppy seeds and we make it into opioids so we can have heroin, and we do all these terrible things. We take the marijuana plant, and instead of using it for beneficial health reasons, we take it and we smoke it like it's nothing, like there's no tomorrow, you know? We take the tobacco, and instead of using it for good, we take it and we make these terrible cigarettes and these terrible cigars and all this terrible stuff that is polluting our bodies, that's slowly killing us. We take all these things that God has given us and we somehow turn it into a terrible thing because we think that we've earned some sort of pleasure, that we just get to have fun with everything that God's given us. No, it doesn't work that way. We cannot live our life without God. We would not have all the things we have without God. All the things that we take and we twist to fit our own agenda and to fit the way we feel and to fit the way, all that stuff, we throw it out the window. God has provided us with the opportunity, the free will, to either take that stuff and use it for good or take that stuff and abuse it for our own pleasure. And it slowly kills us. And we wonder why life expectancy is down. And we wonder why illness is up. And we wonder why all these things happen. We wonder why there's so much divide in our world. It's because we need God, but we take our entire lives and separate it from God just because we want to have a little fun. Just because we want to, have a little pleasure. Just because we think that we know better than God. We don't. If we knew better than God, we could just create whatever we wanted. We could create things out of thin air. We could just poof, magic. Star Wars is real. I got a lightsaber and I can use the Force and I can float things around and I can do all the stuff that a God would do. No, none of that is true. None of that works. We cannot live our lives separate from God. When we live our lives separate from a higher power, separate from some sort of order, it turns into chaos. And when it turns into chaos, it turns into evil things very, very quickly because we think we know better and then we resent God. We resent that higher power because we say, there's so many rules, there's so many things we have to follow. A life without rules, a life without, a construct, a life without some sort of thing to live by, that's not a life at all. That's not life. That's something else. You're living without a soul at that point. You're living just for the hell of it. You can't do things for the hell of it. You have to do everything with purpose, and God gives us purpose. We have no purpose without a creator. The painting doesn't just appear there, right? A printing of a painting there's a reason that a printing of a painting costs $20. The Mona Lisa, if I print that out, I can sell it in a store for $20 as a reprint. But the actual Mona Lisa sells for hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. There's a reason for that. Because the creator took something. He took that brush and he made these strokes and these intricacies and he did things that we couldn't do because we're not God, because we're not Da Vinci, because we don't understand these things. He took it and he made these little intricacies and these little things that we can't point out on a reprint. But if you go and you go to the Louvre or wherever, I think it's in the Louvre, the Mona Lisa, and we go there and we look and we're like, oh my goodness, this is an intricate thing that someone who is so inspired by something and the art that we create, the videos that I make, the paintings, the singing, all of it comes from some sort of inspiration from a higher thing called God, called whatever you call it. None of our life can be separate from God. Or else it turns into I know better and I can do whatever I want because I know better and I'll be fine. It can't work that way. It can't work that way. It never has, it never will. That's why our world is so much chaos, because we refuse to accept the fact that there is a God that loves us and that cares about us and that knows better than us. And we can't accept the fact that sometimes we're wrong and that sometimes we need guidance. That's why all these things happen. That's why all these terrible things happen in our world. We need God. And that's why. So I know this was a long-winded episode. Not quite sure how long I went. I don't set timers for these things. But that was maybe that's one of my better ones that I've done. Maybe not. I don't know. You let me know. Do comment, like, and subscribe. Please, I greatly appreciate that. Again, please let me know what you thought about the video. Let me know ideas for any other future videos. And I will catch you on the next Colin's Corner.